message that is loud and clear and does not mince words. We have come to take our country back.
I announce my candidacy for President of the United States.
Good afternoon, Ring Hills, and welcome to our segment of the 2016 presidential election.
In the next 15 minutes, we will be informing you on the latest and greatest updated news of our 2016 presidential candidates.
To recap the last election in 2012, Barack Obama pulled ahead of Mitt Romney and won with 332 electoral votes over Romney's 206.
Obama also won the popular vote 50% to Romney's 48.4%.
Now, shifting to next year's election, the Democrats are looking as if their prime candidate has, for the most part, been chosen.
Yes, Rachel. Hillary Clinton, who officially announced her candidacy for the Democratic side in a YouTube video this April, does seem to have a strong lead over her fellow Democratic opponents, such as Bernie Sanders, Martin O'Malley, and Lincoln Chafee.
Let's discuss these Democratic candidates and their motives to become the next president of the United States. Starting with Clinton, her main message will be to focus on helping those in the middle class. This will start with increasing the minimum wage and beginning education earlier in regards to children. Clinton's message is from a mother's standpoint. She's trying to connect with mostly women and their viewpoints on the political side. The possibility of Clinton winning this race will put her as the first woman to ever become president in the United States.
Bernie Sanders, another prime Democratic candidate, is centering his campaign around increasing the spending of the government in an attempt to create jobs and provide support for the people. Sanders will focus on his arguments with Clinton in hopes to win over the Democratic vote. His views appeal more to the liberal Democrats in areas like New Hampshire and South Carolina.
Two recently released candidates, Martin O'Malley and Lincoln Chafee, have two different approaches to this election. O'Malley's main target is similar to Clinton's in a way which he supports change for the middle class, trying to provide them with a better overall lifestyle. Chafee is focused on national security, a strength for Chafee, and an area where he can make Hillary Clinton look bad to Democratic voters.
And don't forget about the former United States Senator Jim Webb, another possible Democratic candidate, who stated, "I'm seriously looking at the possibility of running for president, although nothing is certain yet."
The Republican side has quite a few candidates in controversy to the Democratic side. Definitely running are Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, Ben Carson, Carly Fiorina, Mike Huckabee, Rick Santorum, George Pataki, Lindsey Graham, Rick Perry. And for probably, we have Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, Chris Christie, Bobby Jindal, and John Kasich. And for anyone who's wondering, Mitt Romney is not running.
Wow, Rachel, that was quite a mouthful.
Indeed it was.
To elaborate on some of these Republicans, we'll start off with Ted Cruz, a current senator of Texas. Cruz was the first to announce his candidacy on March 23rd, although there is speculation that because Cruz was born in Canada, some are unsure of his eligibility to run for president. If he is able, Cruz will base his campaign off of his conservative ways and go completely against the current president. Cruz will argue about the health laws currently set and target Christian conservatives, mostly located in Iowa and South Carolina.
While on the subject of conservative candidates, Rand Paul is trying to make a name for himself as a new and improved kind of Republican. He mentions at times that he doesn't agree with either party, but his views are mostly pushed towards the Republican side. He believes that recent governmental choices will affect future generations negatively. Paul is pushing for a more traditional government where privacy and civil liberties come first.
Another interesting candidate is Carly Fiorina, who agrees with same-sex marriage and opposes abortion. She is a Republican who supports large business corporations and agrees with the tough military system overseas. Fiorina is one of the very few candidates who has a private sector experience, which means she has more experience and insight with the average person rather than just political acquaintances. This will give her an advantage in the race, yet many Republicans may hesitate due to her lack of position in office.
Marco Rubio is taking an optimistic and positive approach when it comes to his campaign. Rubio's supporters find him to have an inspiring message that will hopefully touch many. He is the son of Cuban immigrants and is now trying to become the President of the United States. Rubio is hoping that his youthfulness will influence some Republicans into wanting a new generation of leaders, young, fresh, and ready to take charge. Rubio hopes to bring back the idea of the American dream by promoting it during his campaign.
There is also Rick Perry, who is a new addition to the candidates. The former Texas governor ran 4 years ago during the 2012 election, yet was clouded by Mitt Romney at the time. Perry is focusing his campaign this year on foreign policies. For those of you who are unaware of what that is, a foreign policy is a plan of action that our nation has adopted to deal with issues that may arise with other countries. Perry also hopes to win over the votes of former military members in regards that they will appeal to his military experience in the Air Force. This will tie into Perry centering some of his campaign on the plans he prepares to make as Commander-in-Chief of the military forces, if he was to be elected.
Wayne Hills High School News has had the opportunity to go around and ask others of their opinions on the upcoming election. Here's what they had to say.
Good afternoon, Mr. Byrne. I'd like to kick off this segment by asking if you consider yourself a Democrat or a Republican, and why?
Well, I have always considered myself a Republican. I tend to lean more towards conservative social views, smaller government, different tax policies than the Democrats. So I'm definitely consider myself a Republican.
What would you like to get out of this 2016 presidential election?
That's a tough question. I think one of the things I'd like to see out of this presidential election is perhaps a sort of bringing together of the left and the right. I think what's happened recently is that there's been a polarization of sort of left wing, if you will, or very liberal Democratic views and probably more right wing Republican views. And I think what I'd like to see is someone who can bring sort of both ends of the spectrum together, because I think there's a big population in the middle of the population of the country who have a lot of outstanding needs that need to be resolved.
What did you and didn't you like about some of the past presidents?
I think being president is a tough job. There's a lot of people in this country. There's a lot of different views. I think most recently with our current president, I think he's been with his social policies and sort of tax policies, immigration policies have, again, kind of going back to what I've said before, has taken a very sort of, I'll say, liberal interpretation of government and how it involves or how it can help support the population. Similarly with Bush, President Bush before him, I forget which number he was, took a very right-wing view of getting into the military, entering into what turned out to be probably an inappropriate war in Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran. So I think it's a very tough job, but there's a lot of things that I like and a lot of things that perhaps I'm not necessarily so happy with.
How would you describe the society in the United States altogether?
That's a tough question too. I think in my years of being in this country, I think the society today is very polarized. I think both from a social perspective, from a racial perspective, from an economic perspective. I think what's happening is that there are sort of what's called the 1% or rich people, and there are those who are, I guess, the 99%. I think society is very polarized. I think what needs to happen is that there needs to be some common ground or a sort of coming together of sort of the extreme wings of both parties.
So with that being said, who are you hoping to see really strive in the 2016 election?
Who? That's a tough call. I think looking at the Democratic ticket, I think I guess you call her Secretary Clinton. Her last political office was Secretary of State. She seems to be representing the Democratic Party. I think the Republicans, it's sort of a free for all. There's a lot of people who are entering the race, a lot of people who have a voice in the agenda, and I think what remains to be seen. At this point in June, the election is 16 months away. A lot's going to happen between now and then, but what I'd like to see is sort of, from my perspective, at least a constructive debate about the issues that I talked about bringing together the left and the right and finding a middle ground, which, for the record, as a Republican, I think President Clinton did a very good job of doing. I'd like to see that, and whoever the Republican candidate being biased towards Republicans, I'd like to see that candidate shine.
Great. Thank you for your time, Mr. Burke.
Thank you very much. Sure.
Go.
What a great interview that was.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun speaking with him.
Okay, well, now on to the topic of how these candidates are going to win. Some of these people have ties to the past presidents and other political figures that can help them gain voters and insight on how to run a good campaign. Some of these people are Hillary Clinton, Rand Paul, Lincoln Chafee, and Rick Perry.
First-hand experience with the White House when she was First Lady from 1993 to 2001. Her husband was president for 2 terms, and that could give her a serious advantage over all the other candidates. Bill Clinton could help her gain some votes because of his time in office. Not to mention, she was also Secretary of State under Obama.
Lincoln Chafee was the son of former U.S. Senator. When his father retired, he took his seat in the Senate. What's interesting about Chafee is that he has experience in both sides of the spectrum, since he was a Republican Senate, but later became a Democratic governor. That could help him gain votes from both parties.
Rand Paul gets a lot of help from his father, Ron Paul, who some believe is a political icon. Most Ron Paul fans believe his son will portray his views and therefore will be entitled to voting for Rand Paul. Having his father as a backup is one of Paul's biggest strengths.
And Rick Perry has support from those who wish to see him succeed in 2012's election. He was the successor of George W. Bush as governor, which could also help him gain voters. Some of Bush's fans may hope to see Perry win. Now, it wouldn't be a political news segment if we didn't discuss some of the dirty gossip that has already begun to spread about the candidates or candidate, even with the election still being a year and a half away.
Hillary Clinton has confirmed that she will be running for president for the second time in the 2016 election. There has been speculation about Hillary's refusal to use the government's email when it came to her position as Secretary of State. Instead, Clinton has been using a vast amount of private email accounts. The whole situation keeps the public wondering, what does Hillary Clinton have to hide?
Based on CNN polls from March 18th, Hillary Clinton had a large lead over her opposing Democratic candidates. However, the Republican poll was not easy to read. Because of the fact that there was so much confusion and possibility for who is running for primary Republican candidate in the election, the results were scattered. Jeb Bush, who hasn't even officially announced his candidacy, led over the other Republican candidates 16%.
Although the election is far away and we cannot predict what exactly will happen, it is important for us to stay involved in politics because we all know without an informed public, the democracy ceases to exist.
Thank you, 8th period, for tuning in, and join us in November of 2016 for our coverage on election night.
So just start smiling or something.
Oh, it's going?
Yeah.
Oh. Good afternoon.
Hold on, wait.
Two recently released. Okay. All right, people. Everyone just calm down here. Okay. Orders find him. I'm sorry. I got Jeb Bush, who hasn't even officially announced his candidacy.
What?
Jeb Bush, who hasn't even officially announced his candidacy.
Why can't I say it? Why can't I say the off this segment by asking if you consider yourself a Democrat or a Republican and why?
What's your name?
Sorry.
She's a Republican who supports. Damn!
Hurry up, I have things to do.
Ready?
What page are you on?
I'm like phlegm.
And oppose.
Sorry.
You're me!
I know.
Another. I can't think it's not. I'm thinking about it. Okay.
Well, you were literally like, you went from 0, no, you went from 100 to 0, literally like that, like lightning. Okay.
Woo! Rachel, this is your last line! Last line! Don't confusing! Rand Paul, Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Ron Paul. This will get. I was on my last sentence.
No. You can make like a mixtape out of this, like get. Oh! Oh! And then we can like, yeah.
doing this because I'm getting this right
You
now.
can do it.